Welcome to Austin Prep Presents. I'm Jennifer Hodgson. I'm the Director of Alumni Relations and Giving at Austin Prep. This evening is our 7th webinar in the series, and tonight we are presenting childcare and elder care and balancing everyone's needs. I am happy to be joined tonight by professionals, class of 2005 alum Sheetal Patel. She's the Executive Director of Great Falls Assisted Living, and our licensed psychologist, Dr. Hillary Bush from the class of 2003. So welcome, Sheetal and Hillary. If you don't mind, can you share a little bit about yourselves for our audience?
Absolutely. So my name is Sheetal Patel. I'm the class of '05. Woohoo! I'm currently the executive director of Great Falls Assisted Living, so when I graduated Austin Prep, I ended up going to Boston University. I did an undergrad of human physiology with a track in pre-medicine. So my goal was to actually be a doctor at the time. So I worked at Beth Israel Deaconess Medical Center as a lab manager and to do research. But as I went on, I noticed that I wanted to do the operation side of medicine. So I decided to pursue a career by getting my MBA and MHA, doing a capstone in assisted livings with a concentration in dementia care. And from there, I ended up getting married when I graduated and moving to Virginia. So I currently now am the executive director of Great Falls Assisted Living, and I am the proud new owner of Reflections, a senior living community, which I get to put my input in of, what's the best way to have senior care and what's really important for them and families in this new day and age.
Thank you. And Hillary?
Thank you so much for the invitation to be here, Jennifer and Sheetal. I'm so honored and excited to co-present along with you. So I am Dr. Hillary Hurst Bush. I graduated from Austin Prep in 2003. I went on to get my bachelor's from Wellesley College and my PhD in clinical psychology from UMass Boston. Since graduating with my PhD in 2016, I've worked primarily as a children's neuropsychologist. For several years, I worked in academic medicine at Mass General. Now I'm working in independent practice. I'm also the mom to 2 young children. I have a daughter who's 2 years old and a son who's 6 months old. Something to know about me is that I lost my parents kind of early in life. My dad passed away in 2012 when I was in grad school. And my mom passed away in 2019 when my daughter was 7 months old. When I lost my mother, I took on a lot of responsibilities for my amazing, strong, independent, COVID surviving grandmother, who's now 101 years old. For over a year, I helped my grandmother to continue living independently in her own home. But last summer, very shortly before my son was born, I helped her move into an assisted living residence. It was a tough call, but ultimately the right call. I feel like everything that I've learned and everything that I know about tonight's topic, I've kind of learned the hard way. So if there's a chance for me to kind of share what I've learned, answer your questions in the hopes that it helps somebody else, I'm very happy to do it. I'm excited to approach tonight's presentation both as a mental health professional and also as someone who's very much living in the sandwich generation right now. I will also add on a disclaimer that yes, I am a child psychologist, but what I can offer tonight is general advice. When it comes to situations like the ones we'll be talking about, there are so many factors that make each situation so unique, so that I can only really talk generally and not specifically. But having said that, I really am excited to share and present along with you all tonight.
Thank you both. This is going to be great. So as Hillary was saying, our program today is both professional and personal. And so many of us are balancing or juggling, if you're like me, families, work, and all that life is throwing at us, in particular over the last year. So tonight we're going to skim the surface of what it means to be part of the sandwich generation or the panini generation, and how to navigate childcare and elder care while also taking care of ourselves, because that's really important. You got to put the oxygen mask on yourself before you can help someone else. So our program is meant to be conversational. So for our audience, I encourage you to use the Q&A feature throughout the program, and we will pause to answer questions throughout. We're going to try to keep the program to just about an hour. We might be a few minutes over as we try to answer everyone's questions. If we don't get to them during the program, then towards the end of the program. So with that being said, we're going to get started. So I figured we'd start out here with defining what the sandwich generation or the panini generation is. So I'm going to share my screen here. The sandwich generation refers to having caregiving responsibilities for a generation or generations below you, so such as children and grandchildren, along with responsibilities for the generation or generations above you, so parents and grandparents, all at the same time. The panini generation describes what has happened in particular during the pandemic. The sandwich is kind of squished now on both sides. So let's start with Sheetal. If you want to speak a little bit about this, and we'll get the conversation started this way.
Absolutely. So as you all know, Jennifer just lovely explained what the sandwich panini generation is. We often see that when this is happening, it's either the daughter-in-law or the daughter or someone in the role of the caregiver taking control and seeing what are options out there for their parents maybe or their in-laws, and at the same time of taking care of their children. And this takes away a lot of their time from either or, and it becomes very stressful for them to say, where are resources out there that can help them on either side? And currently, from my own position, when I see people coming into our community looking for information, they're stressed out already. They're trying to say, I'm trying to go college hunting and I need to take my child to see all the schools so that they make the right decision. And I want to be able to do that without having stress on my mind that my mother-in-law or my father or somebody is at home and they're being taken care of. And so they come to us first as a worried caregiver, but also to say, do you have any resources out there? And so one of the things we first sit down and talk to them are about resources that you can go to your county. And there are places called like the Area Agency on Aging that each state actually has, where they help caregivers actually kind of go over the process of what do you need in place for the generation above you, so your in-laws or your own parents or even grandparents, and then what you actually can do with the generation below you. And this is really helpful to them, because then they can say, how do I then mix those two together so one doesn't get more attention while the other one kind of doesn't get anything, or one gets attention like your children, and then the adults are like, well, what about me? I need to have attention too. So one of the things that we always say is, if you actually kind of intergenerational speak on all of it, it helps. Like having a family night to have the grandparents actually mingle with their children helps a lot, so that it feels like they're doing something together. But then at the same time, there are resources out there where someone can come to your home and watch over your parent or somebody that needs extra attention, so that you can go to that soccer game or that dance recital, or even if you need to go to a college nearby, someone can help watch them while not burdening the other family members that are currently in your family too. So this is a very tough situation to be in, and we see it on all sides. But I know Hillary will be able to explain on all the emotional aspects of it, as she has gone through it herself. But truly, there are points in time where you eventually do need help. And I do run a fully memory care community, and that help is even dire when it's something like Alzheimer's or dementia-related kind of behavior that the parent may be having, that they don't know how to cope with that. So this generation is very tough, and the health of you is as important as the health of the generation above and below.
So I'm going to piggyback off Sheetal's very important points. I just want to put it out there that sometimes people enter the sandwich generation very, very slowly, almost imperceptibly slowly, because sometimes that's how aging works. I'll also throw it out there that sometimes people enter the sandwich generation instantly, or it can happen very quickly, and it can also happen under very stressful, even traumatic experiences. Unfortunately, that was the case for me. I entered the sandwich generation when my mom got sick and passed away, and it did happen pretty quickly. So it's all to say that being in the sandwich generation, being a caregiver on both sides, it's a big job. It is often a stressful job. And I think it's really important to show kindness and empathy towards the people in your life who are in the sandwich generation, including yourself. If you're the person in the sandwich generation, be gentle. As we know, and as has been explained, that these responsibilities do tend to fall on women. We also have research to show us that the effects of the pandemic are disproportionately affecting women in their work. And the final point I'll make on this is that the kind of person who kind of steps up to the sandwich generation and is willing to take on these caregiver roles in both directions, it can often be the kind of person who likes to do everything themselves. And it can also be the kind of person who has a lot of trouble delegating or asking for help or accepting help when it's offered. And that just makes managing these roles all the more stressful.
It absolutely does. We've got a question here already. So what words of encouragement do you have for anyone tuning in who finds themselves in this panini generation right now? And I know that we're going to talk a little bit more as we go. We'll talk about, helping our aging parents or grandparents navigating future, and also, seeing the child side of it and how we can support our own children. But I don't know if either one of you wants to field that question.
I can start if you'd like, Hillary. Most assisted livings actually have a numerous amount of resources. We have social workers that work with us that aren't just for placement for your loved one. They actually help in the community as well. That's the purpose of their position. So if you are not ready or you need time to process what is going on so that you don't just make a decision rashly, of course, because we know how that could go sideways at the same time. So they are a resource to you as well to help to say, your mother or your father needs to be staying at home. These are the types of situations you can actually keep them at home and the resources that may help you. So words of encouragement is that people are going through this as much as you are too in this world right now, a lot actually. And there are a numerous amount of resources for them to be able to have help, and your local fire department and actually police department even know these resources. So if you don't know who to actually go to and ask, a lot of them may be able to direct you into the right place and what you need to do and get some more information. So you're not alone. And I can honestly say that there's numerous places where people can talk with you, and even actually just a lending ear. My community in itself has 3 support groups a month. One is for adult children. One is actually for spouses, because unfortunately there are spouses that place their loved ones into an assisted living because they can no longer care for them. And then one is for the general public that they just want to know information. So it's very important that you reach out to your local community to see what's out there, because we do partner with the community to help educate them and educate actually caregivers so that they understand that there's all these things that can help them cope with stress, cope with helping their children, while still helping their mother or their father or grandparent. And there's numerous trainings even. Sometimes they don't know how to actually deal with these kinds of things. So there's a lot of trainings we do, webinars at the moment because of COVID. So we do a number of webinars that we just send out, and it doesn't mean that you're locked into our community or you have to live here. It's just a source of help to you all. So don't be scared. People out there are ready to help, and they want you to know that they're ready to help.
That's excellent. I'm, as I said, personal experience going through some of this right now myself, and knowing that there are so many amazing resources out there, and just by being willing to speak to folks, and even, speaking with friends and the folks you're surrounded by, and just letting them know, you've got some things that you're dealing with at home, you would be surprised by how many other people that are like, I'm going through the same thing,
Yeah.
and you wouldn't know any better unless you had taken the initiative to just let them know you're dealing with some things on
Yeah.
your own. So very helpful. That's great. I'm going to move on to our next slide. If I can get us to go to the next slide here. So helping aging parents and grandparents navigating their future. So as we were saying, there's a lot that needs to be looked into. There's a lot that goes into trying to help our parents and our grandparents make the best possible decisions for their future, and then ones that are going to be able to help balance your future. So helping them. So let's move on here to see if we can bring back Sheetal and Hillary.
I can start. So decision making, of course, is tough, especially when it's procrastinated. And a lot of the times there's multiple people involved. It may be a family of 7 children, and the powers of attorney are a lot of them. So normally when there are aging parents involved, there's a whole decision factor that has to be placed into who's going to care for them when they get older? What are their wants? What are their advance directives? Do they have a will in place? And these questions are really tough for them. It is hard for them to talk about it. It's hard for actually children to speak to their parents like, Mom, what do you want to do when you're older? They don't like to have that conversation. So sometimes when there are multiple people involved, what we see here is there is a resource, and I'm not sure if anyone is familiar, where there are mediators. So it's like a care manager. So a care manager actually gets involved, and what the care manager actually helps to do is be that soundboard where all these children are saying, I really want Mom to be in assisted living near me, or I want them to be placed over here, or one might say, I want them to live with me, where that's not practical. You're not in a 1-level home, she uses a walker, whatever it may be. A care manager is actually someone that can help be that soundboard when there's multiple people involved. And sometimes you kindly don't want them to be part of the conversation if they're coming from left field and you're like, you have 5 children. There's no way you'll be able to go visit Mom if she's living near you, whereas 3 of us live on this side of town. It's easier for us to be here. This care manager is actually someone that we regularly communicate with from the assisted living standpoint, that we can help all these opinions and varying factors come to one kind of solution. Now, that's just kind of putting that into place when there's multiple people involved. But when there aren't that many people involved, it's very important to have these decisions lined up ahead of time. Because if they're not lined up ahead of time, it puts you in what's called like a crisis situation. And we, on numerous occasions, have had emergency move-ins here, which entails something actually happening for them to have to move in here. A fall happening, someone getting if it is dementia care, eloping and almost, running into traffic, not knowingly, of course, but it happening. And then the police getting involved to say, this person is not safe at home, which you never want to be in a situation where you're not safe at home. So having that conversation is tough, but it is important to have it with your parents or your grandparents. And if you feel you're not comfortable, it's really important then to get your managers involved. These care managers' sole responsibility, normally they are a nurse or a life coach or some sort of background that they can have you cope with these situations going on in your families, but they know the resources out there as well. You know what? Mom's okay now. She could use maybe 2 years of home care, and then we could already look at a few assisted livings to have in mind when something happens. That piece is important, but organizing that, and I suggest to a lot of my families having what's called a decisions binder. So having inside of that the will, having advance directives so what their last wishes are. I know this is also a tough topic, a funeral home involved, knowing where they want to, be buried. It's very tough to have these conversations, but this third party care manager is actually a person that helps have those hard conversations when no one wants to talk about it. It's like the elephant in the room, like, mom, you're going to have to need this soon, but we all know it's inevitable. So sometimes even having those with another person may help. And we've seen that a lot actually be the solution. Here I have a family member with 7 children, and then I think it's 18 grandchildren that are actually adult children, and then they have their own children. So we have one resident with that many family members involved in decision making. So this care manager is actually the soundboard for me when they all say from left field, oh, mom doesn't want that for lunch, and then another one saying, no, she loves that for lunch. It can be something as simple as that. So using the resources out there, or even actually potentially hiring someone to help with that, to figure out what resources are needed in this decisions finder can really help.
And I will see, we have another question or comment in the chat, in the Q&A about that. And I think it somewhat answered the question about, if you have siblings involved in the decision making for mom and dad, and there's sometimes too much help. So it's what's a good way to politely decline? But I think the care manager seems like the right mediator for that kind of a situation. Does the care manager need to be affiliated with the assisted living facility, or independently available before the decision on where you're going to settle your parents or grandparents?
So they're actually independently available. Most executive directors actually care about the person they're talking to. So they don't necessarily care about them being placed here, but care about helping them. So they actually have a readily available care manager group list that they refer to people, because sometimes families just truly need help. So they're independently available. They have nothing to do with that community. Even if you choose that community is horrible, it's old, I don't want to go there, they're still a resource to you. So those care managers are independent and not connected or related at all, but still there for you when you need help.
Excellent. And how about you, Hillary? Approaching the decision-making process, you've been there. Do you mind speaking to that a bit?
Absolutely. I would love to share a behavioral economics principle with you all, the satisficers versus the maximizers. So these are 2 totally different approaches to making any sort of decision. Satisficers are the folks who are going to choose the first decent option that's going to meet their needs. And then they move on to other decisions, to other things. But it's really the first good option that comes along, they're probably going to take it. Maximizers are the folks who love their spreadsheets. These are the folks who want to know what all the options are, keep a lot of different variables in mind, and are very committed to making the best possible decision for whichever decision they're trying to make. I feel like life and being in the panini generation has turned me from a maximizer into a satisficer. But I don't see this as a bad thing. And in my grandmother's case, I did approach the decision along with my uncle, who is my partner in decision making for my grandmother, kind of like satisficers. I think we'll approach this maybe a little bit later in the slides, but we made the decision to move from home into assisted living after a period of declining health. And also when we were starting to run out of options, we no longer had time to visit a lot of different residences and make our spreadsheets. We just didn't have time to do that. So we did a very targeted search. There were a few variables that we knew that would be very important to us. And we actually only toured 1 residence. But you know what? We had such a good feeling about it that it was such an easy decision to make. And my grandmother's been there for the better part of a year now. In our case, I shared that it was after a period of declining health, and also it did come down to safety. When my grandmother was no longer able to be safe in her 2-floor home, that's when we knew we either had to look for someone to be with her at home at all times. So we were looking either at 24-hour care, or we were looking at assisted living. And once we started doing a bit more digging and a bit more research, assisted living for my grandmother's very specific case turned out to be the home run, the very easy decision to make.
That would have been my next question is, how do you decide, or how do you know that it's the right time for assisted living? Do you try the in-home care options that are available to you first? Do you try some sort of an independent retirement community type situation? Do you go into assisted living? I mean, there's just there, like you're saying, there's so many variables to consider. But I think it's a very personal thing, and like you said, some of the things that go into that decision making, there are things that would sort of make or break that place that you first visited to determine whether or not you need to go to the next one.
Right.
So let's see, being conscientious of the time, I'm going to see if we can bring up the next slide where we're supporting children through family transitions. So I apologize for some of the technical difficulties we're having here tonight. Let's see if we can share the screen again. So we're going to be supporting our children through family transitions. So Sheetal, do you mind speaking to this? And then Hillary?
Absolutely. So one of the things we always say to families is to create an open environment for communication. If there is something troubling, say the children of the adult child looking for help for their grandparent or their mother, to have that open communication, because it's never good to like suppress that. You want them to be able to speak to one another if there's something going on. So I think I touched a little bit about this, about having times where you get together to have a family night and you make sure that's intergenerational, or have a dinner where someone makes something that they love to make and it's like almost like a potluck. Now, a lot of people have come to us saying that if I place my mother or my father or my grandparent in an assisted living, it feels like I'm giving up on them. And that's definitely not the case. I mean, if you're a caregiver and you yourself have children, and then you're trying to care for someone that needs also as much care actually as your children, it's also going to do a number on your own health. And so a lot of people do say, oh, I feel so guilty, I'm giving up on them and putting them in a place. But what I like to say to you is it's not actually giving up on them, but giving them a quality of life. So from speaking from experience, we have what's called a resident partnership profile here. It's 9 pages. It looks overwhelming, but it goes into likes and dislikes of what the resident has in mind. Like, what do they like? Where were they born? What is their background? Did they have a college degree? Did they have a wife? What is their whole background? Give us information. And the reason we have this is what we do is we pair them up with caregivers here within the community to actually have them have all these successes. So if there's someone that loves baking, and we also do these on our own associates. So if I had a caregiver that loves baking, I pair them together. So then they can bake in the actual neighborhood together and say, my children are coming over today, and have a box of cookies ready for them when they come to visit.
I love that.
Yeah, it's really important actually, because then when their grandchildren come and they hand them that box of cookies, you should see that smile and that success story just emanate from them. You can see that it's glowing out of them, that I made this, even though at the back of their mind, this, I was placed here, and the adult child thinks, I did the wrong thing. In that moment, you made a successful right decision, because you paired them with something that is going to make them live their lives to the best of their ability. And we see in so many different cases where families feel this way. And then once they come in, they're like, oh my God, my dad hasn't sung in so many years, but they sing here. And we record it for the family members to see, or dancing. We do a lot of dancing here. And then they get to see that, oh my God, they're actually having so much fun. And the purpose for us is not to be an institution, but to support the families in this, that they get to bring their grandchildren and kind of have them be together in an area that's safe. Because you're no longer the caregiver then at that point. You're their daughter, you're their son, and you are their grandchildren. You're not the person that unfortunately has to help toilet them or have to cook their dinner. We are the ones that take on that burden. You're the one now that enjoys the time with them and has that relationship. So I do say that it's tough, it's hard to make that decision, but when you do and you find the right place, like Hillary said, is the best decision that you did make, you just know inside, because you can feel it coming from your loved one that you did place.
Let's see if we have some questions. So what are some things that parents can do to help their children feel safe and loved, well cared for, even when there are all these competing demands? You've got to take care of Nana, or there's all kinds of things that are taking place. So Hillary, I think you would probably be really good to speak to this point about how we can support children and be at a level that they can understand, in particular for those of us who have younger children.
Sure, there are a lot of things that come to mind that we can do to be helping support children through family transitions and sometimes during family challenges too. One of those things is making predictable routines and schedules, but also allowing for flexibility and not having these schedules be too rigid. Another wonderful thing that parents can do is modeling self-care and other positive behaviors for the younger generation, because those skills are really important. It's important for parents to share factual information and age-appropriate information with your children about what's going on with the older generation. When children don't have appropriate information, they kind of make up their own explanations for what's going on. And kind of at best, these explanations are incorrect. And at worst, they're traumatizing, they're scary. What they might think is going on might actually be way worse than what's going on. But a really good way of avoiding this pattern is just by sharing information, like I said, in a clear, age-appropriate manner, and also talking about it multiple times. This really shouldn't be the talk because you only have that one time. Instead, this really does need to be a conversation because the elders' needs will evolve and children's information needs will evolve too over time. The other thing that I'll put out there is that don't be afraid to access appropriate mental health care. It's much easier to work on and address a smaller issue than a larger issue, especially a larger issue that's had some time to grow and become a thing. Something that I encourage parents to really think of, and it can be scary to take that step and to think, oh, I might need a therapist, I might need a parent coach, I need more help than what I'm getting right now to help me take care of my kids. I feel like when symptoms are getting in the way of doing the things that you or your child are supposed to be doing, and also if you're finding that you're having more bad days than good days, that's probably the point at which seeking out at least a mental health consultation is probably a smart thing to do.
I think it's so important, like we were saying, with we'll get into it a little bit more in the next slide, but taking care of ourselves and taking a little mental respite now and again from dealing with two different generations and being stuck right in the middle of it. So we're going to talk about the emotional well-being for caregivers and creating that balance, and a fine balance, especially when you're doing all the juggling that we've all experienced in one way, shape, or form. So Sheetal, if you don't mind speaking to, adult children, not knowing whether or not they may not know about some of the options that are out there when they do need that break, be it mental or physical.
Yes, absolutely. So like Hillary and Jen both said, emotional well-being of the caregiver is vital because you are the person that's making the decisions for the family. And sometimes this is tough because you want to be that person that they rely on. You want to be that person that's there for everything. But so often we see the actual person that ends up being more ill or actually, sometimes takes a turn on their own health is the actual caregiver. So we see this in numerous places, whether it's adult children or even spouses. They're trying so hard to make the right decisions that they end up getting sick themselves, and that becomes what I call a crisis situation or emergency move-in, like I said. So some things that are available that people do not know about is assisted livings have what's called a respite care stay. A respite care stay is where you can stay anywhere between 2 weeks to 90 days. Now, sometimes some assisted living say their minimum is 30 days, but a lot do the 2-week ones. Now, this helps the caregiver and families to be able to have that kind of vacation. And I say that like that because it doesn't necessarily mean you have to go on vacation. You can. We have numbers of families that say, we're going to Hawaii for 2 weeks. We need a safe place for my grandmother, and they come here. But it may be a vacation to take a spa day, go take your children to go see colleges, or it could be saying you just want to be home and have some family time, you and your kids and your husband or wife or whoever it may be. So we do have those respite care stays at these assisted livings that everyone does see, and that's actually to just give you a break. It's there to give you some relaxing time of your own and not have to worry and be that caregiver. Another option out there that I like to mention is they're adult day centers. So adult day centers mean that they don't live there, but for the day you get the break. So say you wanted to go from 9 to 5, most of them are open between 9 to 5 or 9 to 6. Each state has their own. They're county run normally. And what you do is you say, I'm just going to drop you off. It's almost like a senior center, but it's a day center where they actually do care too, if you ever were to need it. So they have licensed caregivers there. So you're able to drop them off at whatever time you need them to be dropped off once you've had that conversation with them. And you can actually use that day to maybe go to the spa, go take your son or daughter to a soccer game or be involved in their dance recital, or maybe you're going to actually do something with Girl Scouts. Actually, those little moments that mean so much, that get you rejuvenated to be that caregiver. So the adult day centers taking on that assisted living for doing that respite stay is very important. And just the other day, we had someone scheduling with us. We need 3 respite stays, one in July, one in September, and one in December. We're going here. They don't have to explain anything to us, but they love to. So they're like, we're going to Hawaii in July. We're going to the college of my son in September, and then we're doing a family vacation in December. And I said, not that you had to explain, but that's awesome. Like, have fun. We'll make sure your loved one's taken care of. So to know that that will happen and at the back of your mind, it's safe. They're going to be safe. They're going to be taken care of is such a relief. I mean, the adult child, some of them even cry and say, I didn't even know this was out there until we spoke to you, and no one ever mentions it and no one talks about it. It's like that hush hush thing that don't place your loved one in the assisted living, but it's not like that at all. So,
do you get a lot of pushback, if you don't mind my asking? Do you get a lot of pushback from the parents or grandparents that are going into the respite?
So sometimes we do, and actually sometimes we don't. They logically say sometimes that, I know my son and daughter want to take a vacation, so I'll just stay here for the week or two to let them have an enjoyable vacation. Now that's a great transition. Now on the other side, we have the bad transition where they're like, no, I'm coming with you. My bags are already packed. And that's when we have to help them understand that, we look at your profile, like we said, and we're going to have all of these amazing programs for you here, while they're just going to do what they need to do, or, Jason needs to go look for colleges, so we're going to help you. We make it very individualized and personalized. We use their actual names so that the actual resident coming in knows, hey, we know Jason is their grandchild and they need to go look at colleges, and this is how we're helping your family. So we don't make it that you're just another person coming in. We make it that, hey, Joni, I know you're coming here and you really want to go see the colleges with Jason, but Laura, his mother, really needs to take him and we're going to help you. So it's very personalized and individualized, that we try to relieve that stress from the adult child by doing that. And it does make a huge difference. Personalized care is so important. So that's kind of how we have both extremes. And we train on this regularly. I think we have 22 trainings on how to actually talk like this and be very personal to our new incoming residents, as well as just helping the community when they call in just with questions. So.
You're so good. And Hillary, would you like to add, your thoughts on caring for, taking care of your own emotional well-being as caregivers, and finding that very fine balance?
Sure. What I would love to add I agree with everything that's been shared. And what I'll add to it is that it's really important, the best you can as a caregiver, to say yes to things with intention and to say no to things with intention.
You can say no to things?
Say no, you can do this. It's a thing you can do, and it's a thing you can practice. And saying no, I'm sure anyone can find a kind way to say no, and sometimes saying no is the kind thing to do. So people who are in the sandwich panini generation often are on automatic yes mode. It doesn't matter what the request is. It doesn't matter if it's big, if it's small, if it's a request or an expectation, yes, 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 yes. But that is a recipe for burnout. And there are many reasons why we don't want that to happen. I encourage caregivers to delegate or outsource the things that you don't want to do, or the things that you can't do, or the things that like you could do, but that's not going to be the best use of your time. This is going to look different for every person and for every family. So I don't have any more specific guidance around that, but I would encourage anyone listening to really take stock and figure out if there are things that you're taking on right now that really can be outsourced or delegated to somebody else. Finally, an analogy that I've seen attributed to different folks. I don't know who originated it, but it's genius, and I'm excited to share it. It's something that's really helped me a lot. If you think about a caregiver and the expression like having a lot of balls in the air, that's really what caregivers do. We're jugglers. And there aren't just two balls. It isn't just child and elder. That's not it. That would be so simple. But actually, each of these categories, child and elder, each has many, many, many balls within it. And it's a juggling act to keep them all in the air and not on the ground. For both children and elders, some of the balls will be glass and some of the balls will be plastic. Glass balls are the priorities. If they fall, they break, they shatter. You don't want to be dropping these if you can help it. But other balls are plastic. Granted, it doesn't feel good to drop a ball. Nobody wants to do that. But plastic balls, if you drop them, they bounce or they might roll and nothing bad actually happens. And sometimes you have to let a plastic ball drop, whether it's a child ball or an elder ball, in order to prevent or to catch a glass ball that's falling. And sometimes that might be an elder ball, it might be a child ball. So just keeping in mind that you don't have two tasks. You have many, many, many tasks within them. And you can't do everything, and that's okay.
We have a few questions that are coming up here. Let's see. But I'll bounce around a little bit because there's a lot of balls to be juggled here. So this is an excellent question. Is there any type of governing body that monitors these assisted living facilities, almost like a police force to ensure that the policies are being followed? So everything from just getting out of bed enough to take a correct medication, to kind of monitor all of that. Are there any for-profit facilities that would take advantage of insurance payments and not focus on good care? So it's a pretty fully loaded question.
Yeah,
right?
that is pretty fully loaded. Actually, yes, we hold our licensure from the Department of Social Services, and that's every state. And every state holds their own because the laws are different for every state. What this means, we actually have a state inspector for every single community, every adult daycare center that I spoke on, every senior center. They're all actually governed by the Department of Social Services. So an inspector actually comes in and speaking on, does someone wake up to take that medication? They actually monitor and watch the resident. So what you do is when they do come in here, you have any resident that comes into an assisted living has what's called a care plan or a service plan. Now that goes over everything. It goes over mobility, ambulation, food, medications, even financial responsibility, like who actually takes care of the bills here. It goes over a numerous amount of activities of daily living, bathing, dressing, to the fact of they even say, can they actually use a toothbrush on their own? So it goes over all of these pieces, and that's what this state inspector then comes in to read. And once they read one, they actually go and observe that resident. Are you saying what you're going to take care of for this resident happening? Is it happening in the back? Is that caregiver, if you said they need to be handed the toothbrush every morning with toothpaste on it and told to brush their teeth, is that caregiver doing that when they wake up? They actually get here at 7, sometimes 6 a.m. to see, is that person doing what they're supposed to be doing? And is the actual facility, we like to call ourselves community because we don't look very institutional inside, but they actually look at all of those pieces. Now, if you're not, you get what's called a citation or a violation. This means you're not following what actually the care plan in the state is requiring you to do. Now, majority of assisted livings are actually out of pocket, what we call out of pocket, and they're actually paid for by the family members by either life insurance or just the money that the family member had, whether it was estates or any belongings that they sold. Unfortunately, not a lot of them actually take insurances. So they don't take Medicare, TRICARE, and any of that. That's mainly for only their medications or any doctor services they require. A lot of it's out of pocket. So that's why they have these governing bodies. And then we're also, on the other side, the health department comes in as well. Are you making sure that their nutritional value is taken care of? We have a lot of pieces where the dietitian has to be on board and has to actually review every single menu and every single meal that comes through in our community. So there are a lot of pieces that actually go into play when there's an assisted living involved. The dietitian has to do quarterly reviews. They have to sit down and say, you know, this person lost 15 pounds. Are you not cooking what they like to eat? That's how personalized it is. Yeah. And then the health department comes in and says, you know what, this resident is here and he keeps opening the fridge. This fridge could actually get all the food, could go spoiled. How are you securing that for the other residents that would like to have non-spoiled milk when they want cereal or something? So they actually look at every facet of our building and how it works. It's hard, it's a tough job because every individual is so different that we make sure we're getting every piece of it, but they do look at that service plan, and that care plan is accessible by all family members and responsible parties of that loved one that's moved in here. So if there's ever a time that you wanted to look at it and say, mom keeps saying that she doesn't get this and this done, you can actually request from the community or facility and say, can I see mom's service plan? I'm just curious, are these things happening? And then if you have questions, and I'm part of an assisted living, so we never like this happening, but there's something called adult protective services. If you think the community is not taking care of your loved one the way you feel it needs to, you can actually call what's called APS, Adult Protective Services, and say, I really would like you to just take a visit to the community to see if my father is getting the care that he really requires. And what they do is they send a social worker here and they observe them, whether it's 1 day, 1 week, 1 month. They observe them and the case keeps open because they'll make a surprise visit to see if it's happening. Now, none of us like that because it keeps us on edge, like, oh my God, we did something wrong. But honestly, it keeps you on your toes. You want to make sure you're doing the right thing. And that's why you do have all these governing bodies that take each piece and make sure that it's working and fits into this puzzle of a community. So where I would say we don't like seeing all these visits happening, it does keep us doing what's right and doing what's good for the resident. So, and of course, not saying and fibbing you're doing something that you're not.
Excellent, thank you. Another question we have, how do you involve your children in the caregiving of this next generation of the parents and the grandparents? How would you integrate your children into that situation, keeping it at a level that they can comprehend, but also helping them feel like they're very much a part of all of this?
So in the community, actually, I did speak on how we do those profiles. A lot of our family members do come to us and say, I did fill out that profile, but it's not working. What we do is we say, okay, well, what do your grandchildren like to do then? So we do it the opposite way. So if they say, he loves soccer, what we then do is kind of prep our residents to say, start showing them soccer shows or something to kind of help relate them, even if they're not interested, but just to help and say, I saw all these magazines and I heard your grandson loves soccer. And then they may say yes, or they may say, I don't know, and not be interested. But the more you sit with them and the more you actually give them that attention to say, he's coming, you want to try to make him or paint a soccer ball for him. We did actually painted soccer ball, and the grandparent signed it and actually gave it to him when he came in to visit. And what they did was they played with it in the backyard, so it kind of got ruined, but it didn't matter. It was the thought that counted. And then the grandson actually took the soccer ball home. So how we do it is we try to do the opposite way then. If we learn so much about the resident, why not learn about the grandchild then? And then try to incorporate that so the adult child then feels comfortable bringing them on a regular basis. Because seeing their grandchildren actually lights them up. They love it. It's a whole nother level of excitement for them, so.
We have several programs here at Austin Prep where our students will go, pre-COVID in particular, would go in and into some senior facilities around here, and it just brightens their day.
I was one of them. Yeah. I did my senior service at the nursing home down the road. I forget the name of it now, in Reading.
So the residents at Pearl Street, and we have an artist, which is a newer facility. I don't believe.
Yeah, that's our company, same company. Yep.
Yeah.
So this one was a nursing home, but it was similar. You play bingo with them, you play cards with them, and it means so much to them. That intergenerational programming, it just does a whole light up of them to say, they're really, really understanding and feeling like they're needed when they come. So it's really nice. We even do story time. A lot of them will say, oh, Dada, will you read this to me? And then they'll sit there and read a book to them. And we actually provide the book so no one feels the need to have to already have it. So we provide those kinds of things for them so that they can have that successful, seeing their grandchildren, that successful moment that makes that adult child feel so comfortable.
And Hillary, would you like to speak to this at all as well, from the perspective of maybe the parent who has their child at home and they're going to go visit, say, their grandparents, or what would you recommend?
I'll share what it looks like for my family. So my children are really young. They're only 2 and 6 months old. So what that looks, involving them in my grandmother's life, looks like bringing them to visits where my grandmother lives. Unfortunately, for several months, this just wasn't an option due to caution or COVID precautions. But very recently, it's been permitted again. And just this past Sunday, we had a really, really wonderful family visit together. Again, my children are really young. They're maybe too young to pick up on what I'm doing, but maybe not. I allow them to watch me do things for my grandmother. If I'm filling up her medicine case, I might say, oh, I'm helping Grammy, I'm doing her medicine. If I'm baking a treat to bring with me the next time I'm visiting, I might say, oh, we're baking a treat for Grammy. I kind of label the positive things that I'm doing in hopes that someday they'll do these things for me or for the generation above them.
It's like you were saying with modeling behaviors. And I know my own kids, they were just concerned about whether or not they were going to get to continue to have sleepovers. That was really important. It's a valid concern.
Yeah. And it's okay to actually, if they're scared to go, I've had actually grandchildren scared to come into the assisted living. They don't understand it. They don't want to go behind those doors. Like, what, why are we coming to this, strange place? So a lot of them sometimes don't understand, but it's okay. It's okay if they don't understand, and it's okay for them to be scared or sad during that time, because then you can at least help them get that positivity, like Hillary said. He's saying like all those little pieces, like we're baking this for Grammy, we're gonna deliver this to her. Like having those positive moments help them understand as well. So I've had the flip side where they don't want to go anywhere inside. They actually stay up front in my office with me. So I'll joke around with them, and they'll be coloring on the ground in my office while their parent actually goes to visit. And it's okay. And it's only when they're comfortable do you want them to be pushed into that kind of environment. And then slowly they start seeing like other children coming in and out, obviously pre-COVID, but seeing them coming in and out, then they start saying, oh, and I was like, do you want to go back there with me and kind of check it out? And then they'll be like, okay. And I'll say, oh, I have an ice cream bar too back there. Let's go get one of those.
Does it every time.
Exactly. And we have a full-on kitchen. So it can be even as something as simple as a grilled cheese I can get for them. And they'll come walk with me. We'll get it. We'll say, let's go sit with Pop. And they'll be like, okay. And then they'll sit down, and it takes that effort from the community themselves actually to help the family member too. That's why I say you're not alone. The community truly does care, and hopefully you've been seeing that, but community cares to have a successful relationship with all. So
Okay, good. I don't have any more questions here in the queue, but Joey Carrigill would like me to say that you're both doing great.
thank you, Joey.
So well, I think we'll wrap things up here. But certainly if anybody in our audience has questions, I'm going to share our slide here with the contact information for Hillary and for Sheetal. So if folks want to take a screenshot or a phone shot, but we will also post this webinar on our Austin Prep website. But I thank you both so much for being with us tonight. And there's, like I said in the beginning, we're just skimming the surface here because there is so much more that we can get into. And so, if the interest is there, there's good potential that we could do something else around this topic again, because it's important. And I think at any given point, we might find ourselves in the sandwich or panini generation. So it's nice to know that you're surrounded by resources and a wealth of information. So, so thank you both. And for our audience, I hope that you'll join us again on April 27th when we have our next Austin Prep Presents. We're going to have Evan Guarino from the class of 2006. He's going to be hosted by current seniors and our APS Meteor co-chairs, Alyssa Cross and Ashley Murdoch. And they're going to talk about the ins and outs of photography. So, whether it's using photography for social media and Instagram, or photography that you're looking to frame around your home, or whatever that may be. But we're going to hopefully touch on a little bit of everything in more or less a photography 101 session. So again, ladies, do you have anything else you'd like to add before we close out here?
Well, if anyone needs any other information or anything, any questions answered, I'm readily available to help answer anything. That's basically what I do.
Likewise, if there's anything I can do to be helpful, please contact me.
Yeah.
Excellent. Thank you so much. And I hope everyone has a lovely evening.
Thank you.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure.